Wakanda Forever is going to save the MCU. Now, while that might be a little dramatic and probably triggered the f*** out of some of you, I think it's actually fair, and I've got facts to back it up. At the very least, the MCU in Phase 4 has been on something of a decline, but from everything we've heard about Wakanda Forever, it's gonna rip us right out of that rut and remind us all why we fell in love with the MCU in the first place. All right, so let's get into this. We've got 3 reasons why Wakanda Forever is gonna save the MCU, and the last reason is really juicy. Now let's talk about the first reason why Wakanda Forever is going to save the MCU, and it has to do with the tone. Marvel's always had humor, but the MCU Phase 4 has suffered from weird tone. I mean, Love and Thunder and She-Hulk are way too silly, even when they are trying to deal with serious things. You see, the reason that tone is a big problem is because it affects the tension. If there's no real tension, then nothing really drives the plot. And I think this happened in Phase 4 a lot. The lack of actual tension, actual stakes, and all of that driving the characters in the story ended up making a lot of the projects feel like paint-by-numbers MCU formula that's simply just propped up by cool cameos or things we want to see at the end of a show or movie. Sometimes I think Marvel fans forget that some of the best MCU films from Phase 1, 2, and 3 were dark in nature and had serious stakes and tension driving their plot. I mean, you look at Winter Soldier and you've got high stakes, sort of this authoritarian solution to crime that Nick Fury and the World Council are doing. You've got the tension of Hydra. You've got Steve Rogers trying to figure out his way in the world, juxtaposed against modern morality. And then you add into that the Winter Soldier being his long-lost best friend, and the tension is just incredible. If you look at Civil War, it's dealing with real-world issues. A bunch of Wakandans literally get blown up at the beginning. It's this huge affair, and then there's a bombing at the UN, killing the king of Wakanda, launching T'Challa into a revenge mode, and all the while you've got this incredible tension between Tony Stark and Captain America. The way these two men see the world issues and see their place in solving them. And Infinity War and Endgame, despite being very large and bombastic and juggling a ton of different characters and interesting plot lines that come together, they are ultimately driven by the incredibly real tension that is created in Infinity War when Thanos actually beats all of the heroes, snaps half of the universe out of existence, and then early on in Endgame, they realize there's nothing they can do to stop it. And they're presented with this crazy last-ditch way to undo everything and come together for one final solution, ending in a crazy battle fighting against Thanos once again for the fate of the universe. The tension and seriousness of the different characters involved in these plots drive these movies forward, and the Marvel formula is there on display, and it actually really helps to have this sort of unified feeling and a lot of goodness. Like, there's a lot of goodness in the Marvel formula, but unless you're actually bedrocking a project with real character-driven tension and tone to match it, I just don't think you get the same effectiveness as what we've gotten in the past with some of the great projects. Enter Wakanda Forever, which promises to be one of the most serious Marvel movies, if not the most serious Marvel movie ever. And while there's some discussion to be had on whether or not Marvel should have taken the real-life tragedy of the passing of Chadwick Boseman and put it into the fictional world, you can't deny that Marvel is taking this very, very seriously. And the tone of this movie is said to be very real and very sad. And it's kind of interesting that a lot of the actors and actresses that are in this movie performing that they are grieving and having loss of T'Challa are also real people that are mourning and grieving the loss of Chadwick Boseman. And so there's this sort of weird parallel to realness that's going to come through. And at the very least, we know that Ryan Coogler, Kevin Feige, Nate Moore, and everybody that was involved in this project took it very seriously and respectfully are going to introduce a tone that's going to be so damn real. But it's not just the passing of Chad and T'Challa that's going to drive this home. I mean, we've seen clips of Wakanda being at odds with the United Nations and the rest of the West over the use of vibranium. This is so interesting because T'Challa at the end of the first Black Panther movie tries to open up Wakanda to the rest of the world and use their technology to help. But it would appear that the Queen might not be as down for that, and the West is really wanting Wakanda to share its resources, to share its weapons and its technology. That's going to create some real tension as well because she's mourning her son, the loss of the king, and yet also doesn't necessarily want to honor his wishes, and she still feels like the West doesn't deserve the technology and the weapons. And then you add into that Namor, who may well be the best choice for a villain in a movie like this that there is. And in this version of Namor for the MCU, he's going to be old, powerful, and be the leader of a people that remains hidden from much of the world, possibly even has vibranium technology as well. And we've seen in some of the clips that he is so curious about why Wakanda would open up and reveal their secrets to the rest of the world, that he had heard stories of such a place, of an ancient people with crazy powers remaining hidden from the rest of the world. They've never had to change. They've never had to live in fear. And he's jealous of that fact and wants to know if they're an ally or an adversary. And so Wakanda, with the loss of their king and with having revealed themselves, are exposed, and their power and their resources are desired by Namor and the West. And so the balance of fighting and preparing for war while also being filled with grief and loss is apparently so compelling that I haven't seen a single person that has seen the movie come out and say that it was mishandled or anything other than incredible. The buzz on this movie is real, and a lot of that has to do with the maturity and the nuance of the tone that they're going to use to handle this complicated issue. And the tension and tone of Wakanda Forever, I think, will instantly separate it from a lot of the stuff in Phase 4 and other of lesser quality MCU works. And it's obviously a special case with the passing of Chadwick Boseman, but regardless, I think this is a tonal return to form that many MCU fans are going to be looking forward to, and something that I hope happens in Phase 5 and 6. We need to get back to serious tension, character-driven drama, and I think Wakanda Forever is going to deliver a perfect display of such things. Now, the second reason that Wakanda Forever is going to save the MCU has to do with the world building and the connective tissue. The connective tissue of Marvel in Phase 1, 2, and 3 is one of the most important reasons as to why the MCU was able to ascend to the level of pop cultural relevance that it did. Connective tissue and world building. It's been a massive part of the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I think in Phase 4 there was this sort of divide in the fandom when some of the projects didn't have the same level of connective tissue. And there tends to be this sort of group of people online that say things like, oh, that's just fan service, or oh, you just want cameos, etc., etc. But the reality of the situation is that hyped up, fun, nerdy things that were thrown into the Marvel movies in Phase 1, 2, and 3 were a very important part of the success of the franchise. The fact that little Easter eggs and post-credit scenes would get us talking, get us speculating, created conversation and earned media that created even more buzz. The amount of theories and speculation that fans had leading into Infinity War and Endgame was a huge part of what drove traffic to the movie theater for those two films. But to me, it's more than just cameos, Easter eggs, or post-credit scenes. It's the living, breathing world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it's the way in which prior movies and decisions made by characters ended up influencing the movies and the shows that we would then see. The seeds of dissension among the Avengers in Age of Ultron, which Ultron and Scarlet Witch sort of drive into them, being paid off in Civil War was absolutely incredible. The guilt and pain that Tony Stark feels from the very first Iron Man movie and then into Avengers carries all the way through Civil War and into Infinity War and Endgame. It's what makes the massive payoff of Tony Stark doing the snap, dying to set things right so absolutely epic. And this has been a major problem in Phase 4. There's a lot of fun projects that are disconnected from anything else in the MCU. I don't have a good grasp on how the events of Eternals affect the wider MCU canon. I have no idea how the events of Falcon and the Winter Soldier affect where the world is at during the Moon Knight show. And for that matter, I don't even know when the Moon Knight show actually takes place and how events of other MCU movies are dealing or having an impact on that. And as much as I love movies like Spider-Man No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness, even those films don't do a great job of establishing what the world is actually like now in a post-blip world. Like, it's crazy. We still don't have a good grasp on that. And from what we understand, Wakanda Forever is going to deal directly with some of these things. In some ways, it might be the first project in Phase 4 that takes on all of the baggage and the questions lingering after Avengers Endgame and begins to answer them. We've heard there are going to be teases for the Thunderbolts and how the world views security and the role that Wakanda should play on keeping the Earth safe from other invaders. Through the eyes of a character like Namor, who has been on the sidelines watching different things go down and is now coming into the surface world and engaging with all of the geopolitical happenings on planet Earth, we're going to get a great picture for how that guy views how Earth is doing. And when you have an actual war going on between two powerful nations, it's going to be so interesting to see how the United States, how the government, the World Security Council, and the UN all deal with those sort of things. Are the Avengers technically disassembled? How many heroes are actually working for different governments at this point? These are questions that we're all really interested in, and it seems like Wakanda Forever is going to be the first step in answering some of those questions. Again, like, there's crazy stuff coming, right? With like Red Hulk and Captain America 4 and the Thunderbolts, and that stuff has been like just teased to us via, announcements from Marvel, maybe a little bit in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but again, we really don't have a wider look on how this is all coming together. And so in this, the last project in Phase 4, I really expect Marvel, and I have heard that Marvel will really take a lot of these questions head on, return to form with the world building, return to form with establishing the status quo of the MCU as it currently stands so that other stories can pick up some of these threads and have fun with them. And if you're anything like me, this has been a major problem with Phase 4, and it feels so good that this movie is finally addressing that. And I think that has to do with a couple of different things. Number one, they always knew this was going to be a movie that sort of end capped this phase. And frankly, Marvel has really honed in on what the next couple of years are going to look like after a pretty shaky couple of years coming out of the pandy and having to shuffle things around because of the loss of Chadwick Boseman, because of frustrations with Sony and Marvel and the Tom Holland Spider-Man character. And so it seems like things are figured out now. And so this film has the license and the ability to address all of those things that I was frankly really concerned about when it came to Phase 4. And the last reason that I think Wakanda Forever saves the MCU is because it is going to be a return to form when it comes to adventure and epicness. The movie's over 2 hours and 40 minutes long, one of the longest entries in the MCU. It's going to involve war. It's also going to involve the wider scope of what is going on in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in this current time. But now let's talk about epic adventure, man. This movie is supposed to be grand in scale, absolutely massive, with a full-scale conflict between two powerhouse kingdoms in the Marvel Universe. And we need epic adventure in the MCU. This film, clocking in at 2 hours and 40 minutes, is massive. They're going to take their time. They're going to show us all sorts of stuff, and they're going to have a lot of fun action scenes that culminate in a really powerful climax of the full-scale war between Atlantis and Wakanda. And I feel like Marvel fans have been longing for the epicness and the scale of some of the previous Marvel movies. I mean, obviously, Infinity War and Endgame are Avengers movies, and they're absolutely epic, but even even Civil War was massive in scale, action set pieces all over the place, culminating in some really crazy battles. It's super fun and it feels epic. And Marvel lately in Phase 4 has just not had that feeling. I mean, you've got Eternals, which is sort of this ensemble thing. It's kind of all over the place. And then its third act sort of rushes in to a Marvel-esque ending. Black Widow's pretty isolated to those characters and what was going on in that sky base. Shang-Chi, for as cool and grand as it was, and I absolutely love that third act with the crazy dragon, it still feels pretty isolated. It's not grand and epic, although I would say Shang-Chi has come the closest to giving me that Marvel Phase 3 feeling. And I love Multiverse of Madness. That movie's crazy, and the Spider-Man movie's super fun, and it does epic multiversal stuff, but it still ends up feeling kind of small and not as epic as it could be. And a lot of these movies clocking in at that 2-hour mark or less, I just feel like we're all ready for a big epic Marvel adventure. And when you add in the fact that you've had a lot of Marvel shows that again feel pretty small in comparison to some of the more grand epic movies from the MCU's Phase 1, 2, and 3, I think we're all ready to be reminded why Marvel took over the movie game and started delivering these incredibly epic experiences that could stand toe-to-toe with some of the best experiences that we've had in the movie theater. It just feels like Wakanda Forever was a movie Marvel knew they had to nail. They understood the seriousness of the situation and how paying homage and paying respect to Chadwick Boseman's legacy was going to be difficult and therefore needed a lot of time and energy to feel right in the movie, while also understanding that the movie needed to celebrate Wakanda and give us a light at the end of the tunnel and open up all of these sort of closed doors for the MCU. They've just taken their time with this movie and delivered something that seems like it's going to be truly special. And the best part of this whole thing is that if Coogler does what I think he's going to do in this movie, and again, I haven't seen the movie, we're going off of what a lot of people have said and the clips that Marvel has put out there, it seems like he's going to build the blueprint for how to make epic Marvel movies going ahead after this film into Phase 5 and into Phase 6. And he himself will probably be helming other various Marvel projects. Many people think he might be the director of Avengers Secret Wars. And I think after we see this movie, if it is as good as people are saying it is, we're all going to long and desire for Coogler to take over Secret Wars. And if he gets that gig, man, it's just going to be so damn epic to go from one of the best Marvel movies ever created into one of the most anticipated and hyped events in all of movie history. I'm telling you, the MCU was on shaky ground. Some people said it died with Tony Stark, but Wakanda Forever is going to save the MCU. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Like this video if you had a good time. Make sure to subscribe to this channel so you have a chance to win the dope nerdy thing that we give away each month. This month, it is 2 sets of an Iron Man and a Thor Marvel Legend figure that are super dope and hard to come by. And we're also giving away a set on our live streaming channel, which has way less subscribers, so maybe go over there and subscribe. You'll have a much better chance of winning the Marvel Legend figures. And if you're looking to watch more, why not check out this video I just did about the MCU future for Vision, Scarlet Witch, and their son, Billy Kaplan.